Maple Leaf Audio and One Click Digital present Shoot the Dog by Brad Smith. Narrated by Graham Winton and directed by Ezra Tenenbaum. One Click Digital provides free audiobook downloads in partnership with thousands of public libraries. To see if One Click Digital's extensive catalog is available to you, visit your library's website. The author opens with a quotation from Uncle Remus. "You can't run away from trouble. There ain't no place that far." And now, Shoot the Dog.
Chapter 1. When Virgil Cain came in from baling hay, it was 3 minutes past noon, and the phone in the kitchen was ringing. Jake Norsworthy from Woodstock Saddlery was on the line, saying that Virgil's harness was ready for pickup. Jake couldn't know it, but with the 10-acre hayfield behind the barn baled and ready to be loaded onto the wagons, his timing couldn't have been better. Virgil cut a thick slice of roast beef from the night before and laid it between 2 pieces of bread, slapped on some mustard, and ate in the truck on his way to the saddle shop. The day was hot and growing hotter, a carbon copy of the day before and the day before that. There had been no rain for nearly a month. The truck had air conditioning that had undoubtedly worked at one time, but not in the years that Virgil had owned the vehicle. He drove with the windows down, his left hand idly keeping beat on the outside mirror to a Christopherson song from the country radio station. He'd picked up the old harness at an auction near Rhinebeck a couple of months earlier. He had reluctantly inherited 2 Percheron draft horses from area vet Mary Nelson last year, and since then he'd been waiting for Mary to find a home for them. In truth, he had pretty much given up on the notion of Mary finding a home for them. The animals had arrived at Virgil's farm emaciated and sickly, like most of the horses Mary had shown up with over the past several years, and Virgil, with the vet's help, had nursed them back to health, at which point Mary had confidently predicted that someone would adopt the 2, taking them off Virgil's hands. The 2 draft horses, a mare and a gelding, each weighed over 1,200 pounds now, and they were impressive to look at, their coats a gleaming reddish-brown, their manes and tails a strawberry blonde. They passed their days picking at the grass in Virgil's pasture field in front of the barn, or standing lazily beneath the large sugar maple in the corner, alongside the dozen or so other horses Mary had delivered over the years. Virgil had recently named the 2 Bob and Nellie, after a team of mules he'd seen Gabby Hayes driving in a movie. He'd never bestowed a name on a single animal on the farm in the past, none of the other horses, none of his beef cattle, not even the half-feral cats who kept the granary free of rats and mice. But he named the Percherons because he intended to put them to work, and in Virgil's mind, the hired help needed to be called something. He'd found a book at the library in Saugerties that described in considerable detail how to break draft horses to harness. When first dropping the Percherons off, Mary had mentioned that the previous owner had used them in country plowing competitions when he wasn't starving them or mistreating them in general. If that was true, then the 2 animals had forgotten most of what they'd learned. Maybe they had mental blocks regarding that part of their history. Virgil couldn't blame them if they did. The book, How to Break Your Horse to Harness, was written by a man named Robert Leroy Smith and published in 1927. The library had offered to do a computer search of the neighboring library branches for Virgil in the hope of turning up a more modern volume on the subject. But Virgil had declined, reasoning that whatever methods had worked in 1927 were likely to still be effective today, unless, of course, a person was dealing with some newly developed, computerized horse, and there was nothing about Bob or Nellie that suggested this was the case. The harness he'd bought at auction was dried out and brittle, but mostly salvageable. Virgil had cleaned the leather with saddle soap and then lubricated it with mink oil. The hardware was brass and had shined up nicely. He'd first hitched the animals up singly, walking them around the barnyard, getting them used to stopping and going, and turning one way or the other. Neither seemed at all accustomed to the harness, which may have been different from the setup they were used to, but they did appear to recognize the prompts: whoa to stop, giddy up to go, and haw and gee to turn left and right. The author, Smith, made note of the fact that in England the commands for turning were reversed. Intending to keep to Ulster County, or at the very least to the confines of North America,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?